New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and Maine. I'm looking forward to the conversation today.
Cool. Well, before we introduce our willing panelists today, we're here to discuss about the complete life cycle of your district assets. So everything from when a district or when an asset arrives at the district, and finally when it's been either deployed or recycled out. So before we get into it, I want to provide some background, some context around Hayes software. So we've actually been around for 30 years at this point. We're actually founded in 1990 by the gentleman in the name of Gene Hayes. He's actually a school administrator. And at the time he was looking around and he needed a way to track some of his assets at the time, but there was no K through 12 specific asset management system. So that's where Hayes software was started. And we've been fortunate to be first in market for a K-12 asset management system and been able to partner with over 500 school districts nationwide at this point in time. So what we hope that you see or get out of being exposed to TipWeb IT, our asset management software here at Hayes, is really want you to be able to maximize your existing resources. So giving you full visibility into the assets throughout the district and how they're being dispersed throughout the district. If they're attached to a staff or student, if they change locations, things like that, which can also help you possibly avoiding any over purchases or maybe find a couple Chromebooks in a side room that you didn't know were there. Also just allow for better insight for forecasting for future purposes and maybe avoiding any over purchasing for certain assets going forward. And also be able to perform some audits based on that data that's in the system as well. So we'll go ahead and get all that here in a second. So I think I can confidently say that the folks out there in the audience did not sign up to hear me talk. So I want to turn it over to the experts here. So I want to take this opportunity to introduce Jen and Josh. They're gracious enough to join us here today. So we'll start off with Jen, allow her to introduce herself, let us know where she's from and a little bit about her role.
Of course, my battery's about to go dead. I'm from Nantucket, Massachusetts. I've been in this position for 2 years, so I'm still new at it, and I'm also pretty new to education. Prior to that, I worked for tech for the police department. So very, very high, complicated software coming to a school where everything's all about volume was very interesting. We have 4 campuses. We have 1 campus with 4 schools. We have a really large community school also that we kind of call our 5th school. And because we're an island off the coast of Massachusetts, we are unto our own. We have about 1,670 students. We're about 30% free and reduced lunch. We have at this point almost close to 35% Hispanic population. They are our worker bees. And we are 1-to-1, as of COVID, we are 1-to-1 across K through 12. So. And
just for some context as well, we've been able to partner with Nantucket at this point for about 5 or 6 months at this point. And you have the asset management and the help desk system, is that correct?
Correct. We got the help desk system started pretty quick. Didn't take too much to start using that. The asset management is an interesting process. I actually am an accountant also, so I like the numbers and I like the detail. So it's given us an opportunity to clean up a lot of where we're pulling the data from. So in that process, I've been able to clean up a whole lot of stuff as we bring it in. We've just, we're pretty much winding down on that, converting into the TipWeb IT just in the last couple of weeks. So.
That's good to hear. And Josh, how about yourself?
I'm Josh Hunkley. I am also finishing up my 2nd year in my role as the Director of Ed Tech here in Trumansburg.
Huh?
My prior life, I was a middle school principal as well as a science teacher, so I've been in education for a while. Trumansburg, we're a bedroom community to Ithaca, New York, essentially Cornell University and Ithaca College. So we're a unique little rural school with a very strong support for education. At this point, Trumansburg we're just under 1,100 students here in the district. We also are a single campus. We have 3 buildings. We have our pre-K through 4, our 5 through 8, and our 9 through 12. We are, since March of 19, a full 1-to-1 from pre-K through 12. In our elementary building, we are 1-to-1 in the classroom. In the middle school, we are 1-to-1 with students, but the devices pre-COVID stayed at school. And then at the high school, we were a 1-to-1 with the devices going home with the students at the high school. So at this point, we are a year now working with Hayes. And in our prior existence, we worked entirely out of spreadsheets. So this has brought a new level of visibility into our assets and has allowed us to do a lot more planning for our life cycles.
Sure. Well, I appreciate the background, guys. Looking forward to hearing a little bit more here in the coming moments. So let's go ahead and get into it. So the topic of conversation today is the full life cycle history of devices, assets, district's assets, everything from when they're brought onto the district and when they're finally either disposed of, recycled out, or given to students as they graduate. So that's everything in between as well. When they're distributed out to staff or students, if they transferred from site to site, if they've been put in for repair, that full status history. So everything collectively in between, that full life cycle history. So let's go ahead and open it up. We can maybe start with a softball, an easier question here to get things going. Maybe a little bit of an easier one here. Can you, maybe Josh, we'll start with you. Can you imagine maybe the past few months or even what it looked like prior, how you'd be able to handle what's taking place, maybe without something like TipWeb IT in place?
I can imagine my first year on the job, we tried to do it. So we were using spreadsheets, but what we had was a system that wasn't uniform. Each building or each area managed the sheet differently. Different people use different annotations to make a note of when a device came in. So there wasn't a coherence. And frequently, as you did an audit, you would find that you had a student supposedly with 4 devices. But that wasn't accurate because 3 of the 4 were out with other students or in repair or were no longer in use. So trying to move between the multiple spreadsheets, we also found that we had multiple spreadsheets managing the same set of assets. And so people were recording information in 2 different places or more. And we really didn't have a good visibility as to what we actually had here in the district that was still in work in student hands. So.
No, it's good to hear. And Jen, how about yourself?
I'm still back there because we're just converting in. I'm really hopeful that within a month, when they start coming back, we'll be able to track them much better. They were using a FileMaker database with scanners to keep track of things, but the same thing we've got students that are showing multiple devices. And then when we go in the Google console and check who the last child was who logged in on the device, it's somebody completely different. So we're still playing the detective game as we get up to speed. But that's why we're getting TipWeb IT. So hopefully it'll make that much easier.
Yeah, it just sounds like whether it's spreadsheets or FileMaker, like Jen, what you had in place, it seemed like a common theme was not too much cleanliness when it comes to the data. The ability to track it very efficiently as well. So it would be interesting to hear a little bit about, Josh, you kind of highlighted this, what it looked like prior, some of the processes you have in place. What does it look like now? And how do you think it's going to affect your processes going forward? And how you're going to be able to handle that with TipWeb IT?
Yeah, so what it looks like now is we were able to move our device exchanges to each of the school libraries. So over the past since September, we trained our teaching assistants, monitors, and media specialists on how to do a quick collect using TipWeb IT of a device. The student walks up, says my device isn't working. They do a quick collect where they scan the device and they put in a note that what's wrong with the device. They then reach back and grab one of our loaner devices and sign it out to the student on the spot, hand it to them. And in under a minute or two, the student is on their way. My team and I will swing by each of those libraries and pick up the devices that are in need of repair, do what we need to, and then we take it back to those libraries, and the student comes back and does another quick collect and assign. We were also able to do that with our teachers, and it worked really well during the course of the year. When COVID struck, my team and I were getting nervous about early March, or around March 1st. We were anticipating we were going to close here in the Finger Lakes region in New York. So we were able to look in our TipWeb to see who had the oldest machines on campus, the ones that we were most nervous about sending home for a long period of time. We had a stock of new machines that we were able to quickly deploy to those individuals, as well as look for any of our staff that did not have a one-to-one device. And on Friday, March 13th, we had just finished deploying our devices one-to-one and signing them out to every student, every staff member, administrator, support staff, and send them home that Friday. And then that night, 3 hours later, the health department closed the district. So we got out by the skin of our teeth, but now we're approaching the end of the school year. New York, we're still in session until June 18th with our students. So the high school, we already have a plan for our seniors as they come back to return their devices. Our high school main office secretary has an account, and when the student shows up, they drop it off. She scans it in. We've already accounted for them returning the device. The device is already back in our inventory system as available. We will collect that box. We go through our cleaning and processing, and it's done. Same with any of our staff who are retiring. Each of those offices are able to very quickly scan devices, and we know that they're back in our inventory. So we're really in a great spot. We've been able to also, like I mentioned before, the device exchanges during our closure. When a student reaches out to us through our help desk, says my machine isn't working, we tell them the date and time for the device exchange. They show up at school at our bus loop. They walk up to the doors. We have a box on a cart. They put their broken device in there. We already have pre-signed a device out to them. It's over on the next cart. They pick it up and they walk off. We then can go through and sterilize those machines, and then we get those repaired and back out and they're ready for being recirculated. So we've been able to maintain a very accurate record of our student devices, even though we're working remotely 99% of the time.
Yeah, no, that's great to hear. That was some really good insight. Jen, I'd like to turn it over to you, kind of give you the floor here. I guess your situation was maybe just a little bit different since Nantucket was going through the implementation process of TipWeb IT and Get Help just before COVID hit. So I'm sure you had some plans in place of how you'd like to use the two systems, but then, obviously global pandemic hit. But I'm sure it also provides maybe some perspective of how you'd like to handle it come fall if everything comes back to normal.
Well, initially, having the Get Help all set and ready to go gave us the opportunity to put a link on the school's website for families to submit tickets and have those tickets created through the email address. So it might seem like we're starting at the end, but it gave us the ability outside of Google and outside of our whole Google world to allow people to contact us when they have problems. So that's been up and running. Starting next week, those Get Help tickets, if it's involving hardware of any kind, all of those device tags should be in and ready to use. So I'm hoping that when we do start taking devices back at the end of June, we'll be able to implement that part immediately. So hopefully I'll be where Josh is already, at least for taking the devices back. Right now, when we converted them in, we knew what students supposedly had them. So we actually mapped that in. So within TipWeb, it looks as though that device is with that particular student. So we should be able to scan them back in as they come. As far as, you know, the parent nights that we may or may not have going out, I love the idea of having the library or the front office and have students come up and things are ready. We do something similar with the carts. We have milk crates we find are great because they're sturdy. The kids will drop off in the milk crate, and we have a cart there with their name on it, and it's ready to go.
And Weston, it looks like we have a question down here in the chat from Blake. Are students being held accountable for damages? And if so, how are you tracking each of those occurrences? And Josh, I don't know if you want to take that one.
Sure. Yeah. So we do have a device, an AUP that the students sign, as well as a Chromebook sign out form that the parents also sign off on pre-COVID, that identifies that they'd be responsible for deliberate damages to the devices. We're fully aware of accidents happen. Middle schoolers seem to struggle with gravity. So we have that. In the last calendar year, I believe we've only had to work with 2 families on deliberate destruction, or one was a loss. For the life of the family, they don't know what the student did with the device. We've never been able to find it. So anyways, in terms of right now with COVID, we have not been holding anybody for device damages, but again, we're pretty fortunate here in terms of deliberate device damages. We have a lot of accidents. Water happens, coffee happens. You bump it off the tabletop, but for the most part, this still has allowed us to keep pretty accurate records. We can see trends with certain students. If you didn't know them beforehand, you see it in the record of the device.
And it's always a middle schooler, isn't it?
It is. It is. Their coordination doesn't quite reach all the way down their limbs.
So we'll keep moving along here. Now, this absolutely has been a big topic of conversation, is being able to distribute and also collect a lot of these devices. And I feel like, Jen, you've done a great job of walking us through what that process looked like, specifically when it comes to collecting these as well. So maybe, Josh, I'll turn it over to you about how you feel like Trumansburg is going to handle the collection of the devices, because you actually shared a story with me prior to jumping on here about how you went about distributing the devices. Actually, if you don't mind sharing that one as well.
Yeah. So in terms of distributing our devices, so at the start of this, I think I already mentioned, the start of each school year, we pre-assign the devices to our staff and students. We put a little slip with their name in it. We generate that from TipWeb. We were able to print off the list. It has the device, has the staff or students ID number and a barcode. We cut those into slips. We're able then to take a Chromebook, scan it, and then scan the slip, and then slide it into the Chromebook, and we have those ready to go. Right before our closure, we were able to take a look at who didn't have devices assigned to them and very quickly generate a list of individuals and forced them into their hands. Some of them said, "Oh, I don't need it," and they do.
so that they could stay connected to the district, which has been very beneficial. And even up until this last week, we did not have devices home with our preschoolers. Over the closure, the teachers and the parents were finding that there were some things that they wish they would have the capability of doing. And so we were able to go down to the classrooms, retrieve the pre-K iPads and sign those out to those individuals. And then we either sent them home with our delivery drivers. We have our bus drivers do our food runs each week, and we dropped them off that way, or we had families come by on a schedule to limit contact, and they were able to pick up a device for their child. So in terms of collection, again, it's our staff, anyone who's retiring or leaving the district, and our seniors are returning their devices to the main offices, and they're being scanned upon receipt. And then those devices are back in our inventory. And when we come back in the fall, or when we come back in the fall, at some point, the plan is to go room to room and scan the device that's with each of the students when they return. So whether or not we're going to have to service those, we'll figure that out going forward. Though we are fortunate right now in our life cycle that I have a little bit of a buffer supply of devices that we could cycle through a grade level at a time, where we could collect the current devices, service them while they use some of our loaners, and then get those back out and then keep going through the buildings.
Sure. And Jen, you actually shared something earlier as well about how you kind of did crafty. You actually had Chromebooks on your front porch and people swung by and picked them up, and that's how you went about distributing them.
Yeah, it was, my staff wasn't necessarily in a position. A lot of Nantucket is actually dirt roads, but my house is on a paved street and I have a covered porch. So as they were closing, we had a weekend to figure out, and a Monday. So we packed up any crate of Chromebooks that were sitting around ready to go and put them in the back of my car. And I would literally, as people sent emails or made requests, that it was mostly coming from teachers at that point. A particular student needed either a Chromebook. Some of them needed laptops for some of our special ed kids. And we had MiFi devices that were giving out that way also, and headsets and mice, things like that. So I had a label maker. I was lucky enough to grab my label maker on the way out the door, and I just would put a label on things. And because we weren't over to TipWeb IT with all of our inventory yet, it was a lot of scribbling things down and emailing the other tech staff that was working from home. So it certainly would have been much easier to have an online tool to be able to do that. But at this point, we're looking forward to the collections to really make use of it.
Yeah, and Jen, there's just no way you could have been able to predict a global pandemic only 2 months after you brought on TipWeb IT. I'd be interested to hear did you have a process, maybe a plan in place of how you want to go about distributing those under normal circumstances with TipWeb IT?
It's open, and I'm open to suggestions here. We assign all the devices to a child and put labels on them, to the point where when we're purchasing our devices, we actually work with the vendor to make sure that we have the children's names on them, and they register everything in the Google console for us. So we've got labels on them. I imagine that what we'll end up doing is collect them, check the names, scan the service tag, and that'll be part of the receiving process. It'll certainly speed it up, because we're collecting things with gloves on and putting them to the side for a few days, and then starting the cleanup process. And they're not organized. When they go out at the beginning of next school year, regardless of whether we're remote or not, sorry about that, we will be doing that same type of thing. Check the name, scan the device, check the name that's registered, and then take it from there. So
Sure.
that's my hope.
Sure. And actually reluctant not to ask, both of you guys elected to have the SAS integration. Josh was with School Tool, and Jen, I believe it was Aspen for the SAS. Maybe Josh, we'll start with you if you don't mind talking through why you thought that SAS integration was valuable and how you've seen it being put into use, over the past year or so.
Just from the standpoint of data input, like Jen, we have a small team. It's myself, I have 2 full-time technicians, and then last summer we were able to bring on 2 of our high school students for an internship. They became Chromebook experts. Like most IT departments, we are responsible for everything that has a wire, and to sit there and try to import a lot of different staff and student information would have been overwhelming for what we have to accomplish in the summer. So the School Tool integration has been extremely helpful, just to have everybody's information tied into the system. And then as students enroll, they're already in there. And then as students are leaving too, that we're able to make them inactive, but that information's still in there for us if we have to check the history.
Sure. And for the folks out there, this SAS integration is actually updated on a nightly basis. So ensuring that anytime a user logs into the system every morning, they know and they're confident that data that they're looking at, pulling reports on maybe making some searches for, is up to date thanks to that integration on a nightly basis, like I said.
The other piece, Weston, if I can jump in there, is this integration actually helped identify areas where we had some of our staff members in our SIS system incorrectly, because the way we configured it to look for certain fields, we found that we had a handful of our staff that didn't have those fields filled out appropriately. And so our SIS system became far more accurate because we couldn't find them in our TIP Web ID. When we went to sign out a device to them, they weren't in there at all. So it really gave us a little bit of visibility into some historical records for people who've been here on campus for a number of years.
Sure. Appreciate you sharing that. Now, that's quite a bit about the asset management system. Jen, this may be a portion where I kind of lean on you for this, as you brought on Get Help a few months back. Maybe talk through a little bit about what system you had in place. It may not be an actual system, as we were talking a little bit earlier, but maybe describe what that system was like, what the process was like of folks submitting tickets, and how you really seen that change, or how you envisioned it changing with bringing on Get Help.
Our existing system, which we're still moving away from, is just a Google group email address. And it, pretty much one of my database administrator who's on the group, she actually has all that email, sorted elsewhere. So she doesn't even necessarily read it. And then the techs will kind of glance at who it's from. If it's from a teacher, it's like, oh, well, that's one of my teachers, so I'll answer it. They're still very siloed into one tech for each school. So as we move forward, I need to do a lot more cross-training with the techs as far as being able to assist another school. And with the Get Help, as the tickets come in, it can automatically assign, a particular tech, depending on the email address of the person who's submitting the ticket, but it doesn't have to, and it's easy to reassign that stuff. It's also really easy for me to hop on, and I can go hop on a particular subject, even if it's almost a smaller project. I throw the subject matter on there and attach, that particular person to the ticket, and then the conversation is all documented in there. So I'm using it, again, we're still at the preliminary stages, but I'm using it in that way also. It's great too because we have the SIS integration, all the teachers and all the students, they can hop on and it knows who they are to put their tickets in. So all the information, the devices that are already assigned to them are in theory showing up with the ticket. We haven't worked with that too much, but the tickets coming in from outside, from the parents, we can look at and figure out. It's been kind of a transition for the techs, because normally their response to a ticket that comes in is all set, is the response that comes back to the ticketing, to the email address. And now what I'm trying to get everybody to understand that it's really important to document what they did. You know, we might have, as you were talking about asset management before, middle schoolers are rough. The little ones are really rough on keys. You know, if you see something happening over and over again, maybe you can either give a different kind of device or something that's more durable. If you have a situation with a device that just is a bad egg out of the box, and you see that it's coming through over and over again, maybe it's not the kid, maybe it's just the device. So that's where I'm hoping to get to, so we can really start seeing that.
Yeah, and what's maybe unique about your situation is with Get Help, whether the students or staff are already used to a certain process of submitting email tickets, Get Help has the ability to take those email tickets and transition it into a ticket that's populated within the portal. So that way technicians are receiving those tickets all the same, whether it's via email, if you want to keep that process in place, or it's through the online portal, if you want to allow staff or students to have access to the online portal. Either way, it works all the same. Skylar, I want to open up to you. Is there any questions in the queue? We'll kind of take a break here.
Nothing right now. I think we can keep rolling.
Well, all right, we'll keep rolling here. So as we are talking about both the asset management and the help desk piece, and talking about maybe some of the certain integrations, whether it's SIS, what have you, that is one of the strengths that the two systems do have. And Jen, you elected to go with Google SSO for the sign-on integration. Maybe talk a little bit through that and maybe why you found that valuable.
Any single sign-on that you can use, in my mind, is incredibly valuable. There's nothing worse than getting tripped up when you go to enter something and the person doesn't exist. We have a lot of transition of students coming and going. They go back to their countries for the winter months sometimes. So we can have, somewhere between 50 and 75 students coming and going from the school system at any time. All those records are up to date. Any sync that you do between Aspen we have it syncing with the Google console. We have it syncing with Active Directory. We have it syncing with Remind and Clever. So all of those things give the student the ability, and the teachers also, to access, and we just don't have to think about it. So it's a definite investment up front, but once it's working, and for us, it was really, really easy to get it working. It was, didn't take long at all.
Yeah, and speaking of integrations, I feel like you did a great job earlier of highlighting the integration of the asset management and the help desk. That data speaking back and forth to each other when it comes to creating tickets, what have you. When a ticket is created, that information being brought over from the asset management piece, and whether you're in TIPO IT, you're going to have some insight in the help desk, or whether you're in the help desk, you're going to have some insight in the asset management data as well, having that full integration. Maybe that's one of the reasons why you want to bring both on at the same time, but maybe just open up the floor to you of why you found that to be valuable.
For us, the two go hand in hand. Probably, 75% of the emails that were coming into MPS Tech staff are involving devices. And to be able to make use of the Get Help, and the student logs on and it knows their device. So it's all right there. It's integrated, and it just makes a lot of sense to do them. When I first started here 2 years ago, it was clear we needed a ticketing system. And I was also very interested in doing a better inventory, a better way of tracking our assets. It honestly did not occur to me to directly integrate them until Skylar and I were in touch and we started looking at what that looked like. And then it just became, it's like an aha moment of, oh my gosh, look at all the data we can collect on the devices just by having the ticketing system in place. And it knows that this device is with that person.
No, I appreciate you sharing that. So we talked a little bit of, there is a bit of uncertainty when it comes to this upcoming fall, or even how you're going to handle the summer as well. We have talked a little bit about how you're going to collect the devices, but I would be interested to hear from both you guys of if there's some type of a contingency plan in place for the fall. You know, maybe the team has maybe a process in place for maybe a handful of ways maybe your state's governors will decide to go about the fall. Josh, we talked a little bit about offline, but maybe talk through some of the processes that you and the team have discussed, whether it's for distributing out those devices, no matter what the update of the status may be of the school year, or what have you, if you don't mind talking through that a little bit.
Sure. So going forward, we do have to collect our devices from our pre-K and our K students, because grades 1 through 12 do have the Chromebooks. The great piece is that, as I mentioned before, we were able to sign out devices ahead of time. So as our students come into the district, because we're not collecting them from everybody, we really only have to look at deploying Chromebooks to our new first graders if we're not back here on campus, because they would have had the iPads. And then we'd have to just get iPads into our new pre-K families' hands. We are also, just because we have nothing else to do in the midst of this, we just started a capital project, a 2-year project where we are doing pretty substantial renovations to all 3 buildings. That's why I'm out here in a trailer, and I have to keep muting it as bulldozers go by. But we're moving to new teacher laptops for the fall. We are putting in new smart panels. Part of our plan was, as we were retiring equipment out of classrooms, that we would update all of those asset information within TipWeb, so that we would be able to do a per classroom audit of the equipment that's supposed to be associated with each room, where most normal summers we would have collected all the devices. The teachers would have, we would shut down all their systems, and then we take apart every classroom each summer in order for the maintenance teams to go through and refinish floors and paint and all that good stuff, and then to ensure that what came out of a room goes back into the same room. Sometimes you have some mix and match, and you spend the first 2 weeks of school running around campus trying to sort out things that accidentally got moved to the wrong parts of the building. So we are looking forward to that piece this summer, being able to still go through and get a much clearer picture of all the other devices beyond a one-to-one that are associated with each space on campus.
And Jen, I'd like to open up for you as well. I know that there is a lot of uncertainty coming here in the fall, but do you have any contingency plans in place, and how do you feel like you and the team are going to go ahead and try to combat that and carry those out by possibly leveraging the asset management and help desk systems?
Well, the first thing I'm hoping to do is convince school committee next Tuesday night that the students can keep their Chromebooks, most of them. We have not figured out what we're going to do about our incoming 6th graders and our incoming 9th graders are getting new Chromebooks. So we might just do a swap situation. But as I explained before, we use the devices as the carrot to get all of the families to sign off on the automated family connection process of approving the use of the devices along with getting all their medical information. So we're trying to figure out how to be flexible and make sure that every child has a device for the summer, because they've become communication tools. At the same time, we need to swap out the devices that we're working with. So it's going to be, flexibility is going to be the key to this. We are making the assumption right now that we will be back in some manner. We call it brick and mortar, but we want to make sure we're accommodating the children and the families that don't feel comfortable sending their kids back to school. So we call it the hybrid model, but we don't know what it's going to look like yet. Regardless, all the kids have to have devices, and we need to, what we're working on right now as far as new devices is getting new teacher devices, because we had a whole lot that were over 6 years old, new laptops. And then we're working on getting iPads for the little kids. Once we have that, then we are going to be in pretty good shape. I'm really happy for you, Josh, that there weren't moving forward on your capital stuff. All my capital, I was told about a month ago, it's all gone for next year, just disappeared. So.
It's rough.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that, Jen. We'll kind of move things here along. And I do kind of want to pause from the asset management help desk discussion, talk a little bit about the sanitization services that we can also provide during this time. So there's a little bit of a theme that we're running here about having cleanliness of the data within your systems. But it's also another thing to have the assets that are coming in to be clean as well and sanitized. And so we've been fortunate enough to partner with a sanitization partner of ours, a third-party service where they can come into the district, a little bit more hands-off for the district, come in and be able to sanitize all the assets, whether it's your mobile devices or what have you, come in and out. We're in and out in about a business week or so, and be able to, I guess, handle a lot of the cleaning and sanitization services from a professional standpoint. They are EPA approved, as you can see on the bottom. Green certified agents, with standards for ISSA and Clean Check certified. So if those are discussions that the admin team has had internally, once the devices do come back to the district, that could be a conversation worth having as well. Many of you may know that we can also perform physical inventory projects for districts, but if you'd like to pair it with sanitization, we're more than happy to have that conversation as well. So to keep that, I guess that theme going about cleanliness of data and assets, some of the things that we have talked about is some of the integrations, keeping that data clean within TIPWeb IT. We've talked about the SIS system, but it is also worth noting that when it comes to integrations, that's one of the strengths of TIPWeb IT and Get Help is the integration possibilities, whether it's with your student information systems, or it could be with your fixed assets, or maybe your HR or purchasing or MDM systems. TIPWeb IT and Get Help can handle those integrations to help pull in over that data and help maintain that it is clean and up to date for you. Now, speaking of clean data, if it's something that maybe it's yourself or the team likes to do is perform any internal audits within TIPWeb IT, you can easily handle that as well through a variety of different ways, whether it's leveraging RFID capabilities for the audits, maybe using your iPhone or Android phone paired with a little Bluetooth scanner, or a laptop as well. Being able to perform those internal audits to make sure and maintain the assets are where they should be throughout the district. And as you may know, as we just discussed, if you'd like to maybe take a little bit more of a hands-off approach, if that's something you've been discussing internally, is we love the idea of having these summer project for physical inventory, but maybe we just don't have maybe the manpower or the time to be able to perform it. That's something that we can come in and handle, just like sanitization services. We're able to come in about one business week and allow it to be a little bit more hands-off for the technicians and folks like that, for us to come in. We could be the ones getting on our hands and knees and playing that fun game of hide and seek and find those assets, scanning them in, updating any of the data, and putting it into the system for you. So a little bit more of a hands-off approach that we can help take care of if that's something you've been discussing as well. So Skylar, I just want to take a moment here. If anybody has, in fact, added any questions to the chat, more than happy to open it up.
Yeah, absolutely. We did have a question. Are you sending other assets home with students and staff in addition to the devices that are already going home, such as hotspots or other equipment to help support remote learning and or teaching. So monitors, hotspots, any things like that, are those going home? And if so, are you tracking those when they go home?
I can jump in. Yes, we are sending home hotspots with some of our students and teachers, and we are keeping track of those. And we also are planning one of our contingency plans. Because of the project, we've had to clear out a bunch of old storerooms. We found that we do have enough monitors that our contingency plan for our teachers going into the fall with their new laptops is also signing out surplus monitors, so they have dual screens working from home with those laptops. And we've also had a few document cameras go home with some of our elementary teachers. So yeah, it's absolutely allowed us to keep track of our assets. And we're, as I mentioned before, the plan is to bring in many more of our assets, tech related, into our inventory system. This year, we've mostly been working just out of our one-to-one devices, but now that we've got a handle on that, we want to expand it.
I'm tracking all of my MiFis. I'm tracking multiple devices per student if they needed a second one. We're tracking all of our desktops, laptops, servers, virtual servers, access points, and network equipment. And one of the processes is going to be to set up all of the E-rate so that I have all of that tracked too, along with the values. So it's going in slowly, but we're getting there.
Awesome. And I did just want to jump in and add, because there was a question in the chat about it privately. Just kind of jumping back to the sanitization CARES Act funding, districts are utilizing that funding to get assistance with the sanitization services that we offer. And then also because of the remote learning connection and our support of that, CARES Act funding can also be utilized for tip of IT and get help. That's a question anyone had. I just wanted to make sure everyone knew about that.
So we'll keep it rolling here. Jen, you made a pretty important comment earlier about when you got to the district, you found that many of the mobile devices were coming up on 5-6 years in their life cycle at the district. This is a conversation I love having, because going about forecasting for future purchases and having a good understanding of how long certain assets have been in the district is fairly important for budgeting purchases. So I'd be interested to hear how you went about finding that those devices were coming up on that time to be refreshed, and how you saw that tip of IT was a way to be able to maybe combat avoiding running up on, now we need to react that a device needs to be refreshed, as opposed to be able to forecast it years in advance.
Well, I'm a big proponent in inventory management. I walked in the door and I'm just watching these poor teachers day after day. They have, a desktop that's just crippled. They've got a laptop connected to a smart board that's 6 years old, and then they have a teacher Chromebook that's, also really old. But the teachers were kind of the last part of the equation when money would come up. If capital money came up, it would always go to the more expensive things like the interactive panels or Chromebooks. Until I got here, they were not funding the Chromebooks out of the operating budget. So that was my first step, is to make sure if we're going to run a one-to-run program, we're going to run it out of the operating budget, so I know I can continue to do that every year. Well, as soon as that, got accomplished, then I realized, okay, may have shot myself in the foot. I have these really old laptops that the teachers are trying to use unsuccessfully, but that's a hard sell when you're looking for money to go buy, 100 or 150 of them. When I lost all my capital for next fiscal year, they did give me an operating surplus for this year. And the first thing I bought was laptops for the teachers. So hopefully, I haven't looked exactly at the numbers yet, but I'm really hoping that there will be no teacher left in the school system that has a laptop more than 3 years old. And then we continue to work on getting that cycle set up. So all of these devices you said are useful life, and at the end of that lifespan, you're automatically getting in more to replace them. So it's been invaluable, and to be able to show it and mine the data and just, any different way they want to see it. Is it the model of the devices? Is it just, laptops in general, laptops versus desktops? Our elementary school was left by the wayside. The teacher has a very old desktop on their desk over in one corner. They've got a very old laptop connected to a smart board, and they're walking around with a student Chromebook maybe so that they can go to meetings. It's just crazy. So that's what we're hoping to get updated this summer.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. And Josh, we'll switch it over to you. And for somebody like yourself and the team, leveraging maybe a few different spreadsheets and maybe certain data points, was expiration dates one of the data points that you had in the spreadsheets? And, how, ever since you brought on Tip of IT, have you gone about forecasting for those future purchases?
Yeah. So we are in the process of being able to set up our forecast for our replacement cycles or life cycles for student devices as well as our teachers. One of the things that was really revealing when we were doing our initial data import into TIP Web IT was trying to rectify our asset spreadsheets with our purchase orders. And I'm sure many of our participants have experienced this where going back 6-8 years, we weren't buying full classroom sets of devices. We were buying 5 Chromebooks for this room. We were buying 10 iPad minis for this room. And so they kind of piecemealed full classroom sets. And once we started getting some visibility into this, we were finding classrooms with devices that were upwards of 6+ years old, mingled in with devices that were 2 years old. And so part of our first deployment was we actually recollected every device at our middle school, which was the biggest hodgepodge of devices. We were able to sort them based on purchase date and then redeploy them to the different grade levels so that we had cohesive collections of assets at each grade level versus the mix and match. And that now is allowing us to put in the oldest machines went to the 8th graders because we only had to get that year out of it. The newest machines went to our 5th graders because we needed to draw it out over 4 years. So the whole process of bringing all of our data in gave us really good visibility of the exact ages of equipment. There was a few solid workhorses hiding in amongst some really new stuff. And we were able to very quickly identify those pieces and pull those out and get newer equipment back in staff's hand. I'm not going to say everybody has brand new equipment. I don't want to be misleading there, but we are in a position now that we have the right equipment at the right place in each building so that we can move forward each year with a replacement cycle to keep everybody up to date.
Sure. And I guess speaking of keeping everybody up to date, it is worth noting we've spoken quite a bit about technology specifically using the asset management system, or maybe we've only talked about tracking Chromebooks. It's a good opportunity to bring up that within Tip Web IT, there's no cap on the amount of users you can have in the system. So that means that you can also allow the business manager to have access, because maybe the business manager has certain assets that they would like to track versus maybe the technology team. But furthermore, you can have the head of facilities to have access, since maybe they want to track, maybe certain things that may not be associated with technology. There's no cap on the amount of users you can have, but also there's no cap on the amount of assets you can put in the system. So you can get really creative, not only your Chromebooks, but also your lawnmowers and refrigerators and tabletops. As long as it has a barcode, it's trackable within the system. So as we're kind of wrapping up here, we only have a few more minutes. You know, for the folks who may know, we're headquartered down in Austin, Texas, and one of the things that has been so cool to see is the expansion that we've seen with Hayes in the Northeast region over the past few years, and it's a great opportunity to kind of shed some light over a handful of the districts we've been able to partner with, along with Josh and Jen, and you know, hopefully that trend will continue. But so thankful for the expansion we've seen in the Northeast, and you know, a lot of that has been thanks to you know, our colleagues here. So I'm sure that y'all are more than tired of me talking here. So I want to allow, you know, Tim, Skylar, and Blake to be able to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about maybe the states that they oversee. If any of the folks would like to reach out to them and maybe continue the conversation. Skylar, if you'd like to start it off.
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, I cover all of Connecticut, all of Massachusetts, all of Maine, and all of New Hampshire. We're seeing a lot of growth up here in the Northeast, so it's really cool to see a lot of districts adopting not only Typo by T, but also Get Help. And I'm looking forward to the continued growth, so we can have more sessions like this where we're sharing these ideas and really collaborating and connecting districts within the Northeast region.
And Blake, I believe if you're here, if you'd like to introduce yourself as well.
I believe just Tim's on.
Okay, Blake, hop off.
Yeah, this is Tim Brown. I'm the national account manager for Hayes. Been with the company for just over 3 years. I focus strictly on New Jersey. I partner with Weston there. And this is just, as Skylar said, these virtual road shows have really been great opportunities to really listen and learn how administrators such as yourselves have been really sharing their user stories with how they're handling all types of issues, you know, during the pandemic, and really how they've been utilizing Typo by T during this. So very grateful for you all for answering the questions from Weston today, and very grateful for everybody out there for joining. Thank you.
As we're wrapping up here, Skylar, do we have any more questions in the queue?
None that I see. I just want to personally thank Josh and Jen. I really appreciate y'all hopping on and sharing this insight. I know I learned some stuff that I didn't know, even after working with you, Jen. So it was a lot of value for me, and I hope everyone else learned something too.
Yeah, I think I speak for Skylar and everyone else here at the Hayes team that we can't thank you enough for being so generous with your time this afternoon and getting an opportunity for others to be able to kind of pick your brain a little bit and hear a little bit of the inside of what you're kind of going through and how you've been able to use the systems over the past, whether it's 5 months or the past, 14 months or so, like yourself, Josh. So, if I'd love to be able to thank you guys on the behalf of Hayes, and, we're always gonna be here for you, but thank you so much for the time.
You're very
Thank you.
All right, guys, everyone else out there, I appreciate you joining, and, enjoy the rest of your day.